Gentlemen, it is Sunday, and don't adjust your screens. We are going live with a special edition of Wrestling Chat with Friends on a Sunday. Bow, 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 bow,
Meow.
bow. I'm
That's for you,
joined by
Megan.
always by EJ the Collector. What is up, my man? How you feeling?
Hey, yo, I'm here. I am present. I am accounted for, and I am accountable. Good to see you this Sunday. Good to see everyone out there on WCWF Pod on Twitter, Wrestling Chat with Friends on YouTube, and our Facebook group. Let's get right to the collector's choice this week. Since we're on a Sunday, we're a little off our normal schedule. I'm going to go off topic with my choice. Not a wrestling collectible today, but a movie replica. Today, I picked this up about a year ago, and I would say I chose wisely because this is the Holy Grail cup from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
I have no idea what that is.
It's the Cup of a Carpenter. Those who have watched the Indiana Jones franchise are familiar with this. I have the actual one. Nice piece of movie memorabilia. But we're here to talk wrestling, Cheats, so let's get it on.
That is a very special collector's choice, if I do say so myself. I have no clue. And hey, guess what? Don't watch the Indiana Jones movie, so I'm not familiar.
No, okay. Well, this is the cup that saved Sean Connery's life in the third movie. So
I thought it was Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones in the third movie. Sean Connery played his father.
Ah, very nice, very nice.
All I've taken from this segment is you need to watch yourself some Indiana Jones movies.
Arya is really into it. I have not watched. Really into it is a strong word. She's watched them all. I have not.
Most Americans, both male and female, at some point in their life, if they've hit 40, have seen Indiana Jones. I'm frankly surprised.
Man. I don't know. I don't know if I can say that one.
You have your homework assignment for the week.
Someone said already. Someone said
Yeah,
Indiana Jones made history cooler.
1,000%.
I think I'm going to attribute that to someone in the Jasmine clan. That's what I'm going to go with.
Most likely. Mark, in your whole life, you're not aware of any of the artifacts that Indiana Jones sought after in any of the movies?
No, I'll tell you, the one thing I'm aware of is that he's running, right? And there's a giant ball that's chasing.
Iconic.
That's the only thing I know about Indiana Jones.
All right, well, you got a lot to learn, pal. But let's talk wrestling today.
Let's talk wrestling. We've gone off topic already.
The Indiana Jones podcast will be in a future episode.
And we have a lot to talk about when it comes to AEW, a lot that's going on. The last show that we had, you and Megan really went through, I want to say, an hour and a half plus of kind of all of the stuff that was happening backstage, all the suspensions, all of the CM Punk drama. It was a lot. It was a lot that was happening. I was actually not on that show. I haven't been able to weigh in quite a bit, but you said, Elliot, you had a new or a take that you hadn't expressed yet on the entire Punk VP's AEW suspension. So let's get into that, and then I'll tell you what I think.
Okay. Well, I just want to throw this out here because when Megan and I broke it down, I think we correctly, and Megan was leading the charge on this, was correctly assigning the majority, if not all of the blame on this on Punk. And I think a lot of that
Punk blame.
And a lot of it is deserved. With a couple of more days of reflection, I just want to sort of bring this into the ether and see if anyone out there has a take about it or how this resonates with you. And it's a little bit like this. What the wrestling world has seen so far out of all this, they've only seen Punk's side of it, really. And that's by Punk's own doing. Everyone saw that presser where he buried everybody, and everyone has heard their accounts of what happened backstage, which are kind of universally been put on Punk as the main aggressor. And I'm fine with that, and none of that looks good. One point that Megan made last week, when I brought up the idea of going through channels to make sure that, in a company, you got to go through channels. You can't have bosses running roughshod. What she brought up was that the number 2 in the company, her name's Mega. She's the legal officer. The reports have come out that she accompanied the Bucks to the dressing room, and the reports I read were that was to serve as a more of a like professional appearance to hopefully avoid a conflict. What we haven't heard yet is, did the Bucks come to her office or wherever she was and say, "Hey, Mega, we didn't like what Punk just said, and we're going to go confront him. Do you want to come with us to please?" So this kind of gives an air of professionalism and might avoid a conflict. All that's been that hasn't been confirmed. What Meltzer is saying, and Meltzer is a Bucks fan, but I think he at times can be fair and impartial enough. I don't read enough Meltzer to know he gets criticism and praise. What if Mega, who's a lawyer, legal officer, what if she saw the Bucks storming for Punk's dressing room, and maybe the Bucks never invited her? Maybe she accompanied them. Maybe she was trying to stop them. Maybe she was trying to de-escalate the situation. Maybe she showed up and says, "Well, I don't like the look of what's about to happen." We know the Bucks didn't kick the door down. That's been confirmed, but it appears as though Punk started swinging pretty soon after they got in. But one of these defenses has been that the Bucks brought Mega with them. I haven't seen that confirmed. There's this third party investigating the situation. Mega is a highly respected executive. Should the investigation have taken this long with nothing else being reported, no final adjudication dished out yet, if Megan kind of said, "Hey, I was there. The Bucks invited me. As soon as they knocked and walked in, Punk attacked them." If Mega had given that testimony to somebody, I would have thought maybe either this third party wasn't necessary, or what else are they investigating? I just wanted to bring that up because we know a lot about what happened, and there's been these remarks about Mega being there too. But I think that's an important point. What if she literally was trying to de-escalate the Bucks and they just rushed past her, ignored her, opened the door, it started. Mega was a witness, but I just don't 100% buy yet, because I haven't seen it confirmed in the same way you've seen other facts confirmed, that the Bucks did their due diligence to make sure this was going to go off, from their side at least, conflict free. That's what we didn't talk about last week, but I wanted to bring that notion up because as the parent of attorneys, been taught and raised to look at all possibilities, wait till all the facts come out. But I think that's an important piece of minutia that really could go a long way in helping figure out who is overall at fault here.
I mean, here's the thing. I think we know some of what happened. I think we're never going to know exactly what happened and how it went down and exactly why. We're going to hear, all sides of the story, and then there's probably the truth somewhere we probably will never know. My thing that was really important to me that I felt like was not mentioned enough in our previous episode was that this is a bigger problem on the fact that Tony Khan has lost institutional control of his entire operation. I don't even know who Mega is. You were just mentioning this, the number two. I don't know who these people are.
She's the chief legal officer, number 2 in charge of the company.
But it's very clear that Tony Khan has lost all measures of control over his talent, whether it's executive VPs, whether it's CM Punk, whether it's whoever it is. He does not seem to have the control of the company in which he should have in order to be, the authority figure that we need to run a company. He's right now, and to me, he is ultimately failing as a CEO. And I think it's gotten to this point because of his failures in leadership. Now, why does that happen? I do think that this has a lot to do with how Vince ran WWE. And Tony coming in, the executive VPs coming in, everybody saying, we don't want to be that. We don't want to be, one person be the dictator. We want to have talent, have, a lot of control when it comes to creative. We want to have talent, have a lot of control when it comes to certain aspects, in direct contrast to the Fed. They did not want to be that. The problem is, I think they gave everyone either one of two things. They gave everyone either too much freedom or the impression that they were going to have too much freedom. And so the people that had too much freedom, too much leadway, turns into the CM Punks of the world or the executive VPs of the world. The people that thought they were going to have that type of freedom and ultimately didn't have it turns into the Brian Cages of the world, or people that are just, really disgruntled and already wants to leave, whether it's a Ruby Soho or Thunder Rosa, or like there's just excuse me. There was the reality versus the impression, and all of it has to do with being not WWE. And so I think Khan excuse me, great radio here. I think this falls on the feet of Tony Khan more than anyone else. And I think the issue that I was having last week was that I think a lot of people said it falls either on the Young Bucks or CM Punk.
And the buck stops with Tony at the end of the day. So you're saying that it's there's definitely three, if not more, people in that equation, with Tony possibly needing to take more of the blame for letting this get to this point.
And even when it got to the point of him making the announcement about the tournament, which we should get into, he didn't do it in front of the live audience, right? He did it on a video where he ultimately got booed. I think the tables are turning on Tony Khan, honestly.
They might be. It is his number one priority to get control as soon as possible. And I mean, some of that might depend on the results of this investigation to know who he can count on and not count on in the next going into the fall season. But Tony is spoiled by, has an abundance of riches right now. So he ought to be okay. But yeah, he's got to get, talent. He's got to get a hierarchy of a little bit more business structure, it seems, than a little bit more of like letting the guys sort of decide the show for themselves.
Right. Now, and he's got to be at the top of that. He's got to be at the top of that pyramid. He is at the top of the pyramid. He's got to act like it.
Does that or does that not sound? I'm not trying. I'm really not trying to like find outs for CM Punk. I'm a CM Punk fan, but his behavior demonstrated he probably shouldn't be with that company anymore. He did things that you can't really argue aren't fireable offenses, but isn't that the crux? Wasn't that part of like his argument about these guys think they're still in Reseda? Doesn't he have a problem with like seemingly these guys running this major company with $1 million gates like they're just a small indie promotion, letting their friends sort of run the isn't that what Punk was talking about?
You know what? I can't say because I don't know what Punk's deal is. I think Punk gets to a place where it's almost like a person that's just insufferable, and he can't be happy with like he can't just like leave well enough alone. So he could be in a place where he's at the top of the company, no matter what company it is, he's gonna find fault. And I think that's just kind of the type of person he is. And I think that's the pattern he's displayed, whether it was in the WWE, whether it was going to the UFC, whether it was, taking time off, whether it's coming back to AEW. It's all good for about a year. And then he starts to rub people the wrong way. He starts to justify that and find fault with whatever he does. But I just think that's kind of the arc of CM Punk's like career and life. I think that's just who he is. We see this a lot more in like professional sports. We see a guy like for example, like a Terrell Owens.
That's
everywhere that guy, everywhere he went, it's great for the first year. Might be okay for the second year. By the third year, they can't wait to get him out of the room. And I think that's a little bit, for better or for worse, what's happening with CM Punk. And I think it will continue to happen. I don't think he's even if I think if he was running his own promotion, it would start well for a year. Start well for a year and a half. Everybody be excited to see him and come back. But this is kind of the arc. Now, the way that this has kind of legendarily flamed out, I am surprised. Like a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I'm not surprised. Look what he did at WWE and all that." I'm surprised that this flamed out the way that it flamed out in such spectacular fashion because Tony Khan gave him the ability to do whatever the hell he wanted. And if you look at Punk's gripes, it has absolutely nothing to do with Punk. It has absolutely to do with everything else that's happening in the company and who he has to like, who's listening to him and who's not listening to him and who he gets to, the guy had carte blanche and he still is finding fault because younger guys aren't listening to him or respecting the that type of stuff. It's just going to happen anywhere.
So yeah, he was clearly really put out by Hangman's comments, that a very small promo a few months ago that we as fans, didn't remember as well, but that obviously put a really bad taste in his mouth. He felt disrespected and, he went into business for himself. We are 2 weeks out from All Out, so we shouldn't dwell on this much longer. Nothing else is really going to be needed to be discussed about this unless some other details come out or this investigation ends or suddenly we hear that the Bucks are back, Punk is gone, vice versa, whatever. We've seen Kenny Omega has made appearances this weekend in Japan. The big thing today was there were photos of him where they caught what appears to be a bite mark still in his arm. Not sure if you saw that, but he appeared to still have this, his injury that everyone's talking about. So it's just, the story's never going to go away until there is some finality. But in the meantime, there's still some great stuff happening in AEW, and that's probably what we should be focusing on.
We should be focused on it. There is some great stuff happening in AEW, and let's start with the title picture. We are going into Grand Slam this Wednesday night. I actually really look forward to the Grand Slam shows. Last year, I thought it was phenomenal. And this year is looking to be just as awesome. The card on Grand Slam is amazing, but it is led by the end of the Grand Slam Tournament of Champions. The final has been set. Let's kind of go through it, see if you're any surprised in any way. But it was Danielson over Hangman Page, and it was Sammy Guevara over Darby Allin. That led into Danielson taking on Jericho and Jon Moxley taking on Sammy. Moxley takes care of Sammy. Danielson, last week's Dynamite, takes care of Jericho. So this sets up an all Blackpool Combat Club final at Grand Slam in the Arthur Ashe Center. Bryan Danielson versus Jon Moxley. What are your thoughts?
Here are my thoughts. The Danielson going over on Jericho made a ton of sense to me. Jericho had won their previous match. Jericho's been a champion a couple of times, or at least once. So yeah, it's the right move to put Danielson in the finals, and I wouldn't have a problem if he took the title at the end of this tournament. I was surprised a little bit that Moxley ended up going over Sammy. Not that
I think we worked ourselves up into Sammy. I think you and I talked about this.
Well,
and we worked ourselves into Sammy Guevara could go over.
But it made a lot of sense, at least, and that's what always happens when you're working yourself. You say something makes sense, but for a couple of reasons. A, had the All Out fiasco not occurred, Moxley was supposed to be supposed to have a few weeks off, go on vacation. He is a great soldier for the company, so he came back early, cut a great promo the week after All Out, and was in this tournament. So it wouldn't have been surprising if there had been some crazy fluke finish, someone interferes, and Mox gets rooked and ends up off for a couple of weeks. That would have been fine. Sammy is one of AEW's pillars. Not saying he's been the MVP for the last couple of years, but he's a great talent. He has some serious heel heat. So I thought it may have been a good gesture, even maybe on Tony's part, to sort of maybe even send a message to the locker room that, like, hey, I'm still an AEW original guy. Sammy's been here since the beginning. We're going to put him over. I don't want you to think that all I'm caring about now are the top former WWE stars, which, I don't have a problem with, but there could be people in the locker room who might feel that way. So having Sammy in the finals with a Danielson win, I think would have been a good move. No loss is going to hurt Mox at this point. So with Anna Jay and Tay able to interfere, I don't think it would have been crazy, but it didn't happen. I think the fans want to see Mox and Danielson. They will eat it. I want to see it too. That is going to be a great match. The storyline with an all Blackpool Combat Club is great. So, it was the right outcome to have Mox and Danielson. I have no problem with it. I'm excited about it. I do think Danielson's going to go over. I think him holding the title will be interesting. It would be just it would be a little poetic if Mox wins the title back. So the Punk thing gets a little bit put almost away and act like it didn't happen. But I don't think long-term storyline you want to have that happen, because then I think the title for Max is around the corner. So is Mox
the title shot for Max at least?
Title shot at least. So is he going to take another L? Let Danielson hold the title. However that plays out with Max, a new contender for him. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, let me quickly ask, did you have a prediction?
I think Danielson's going to go over.
Okay. Other thing I'll say is Sammy is number 28 on the PWI 500 that just came out last week. So Sammy's 28. He is sandwiched in between Will Ospreay at 27 and Zack Sabre Jr. at 29. Put it in context. Danielson's 7, Mox is 12, Sammy is 28. Do you have any issues with that?
No, I don't. That 500 has a lot
very
of
subjective. Yes,
very subjective.
A lot of issues.
So if you're considered in the top 30 in the world on a very sort of kayfabe list, that's it's good enough for world title for me. Good enough for world. I mean, he may never be world champion, but he's been one of their top stars since the beginning, and he's got huge heat right now. So I remain entertained by Sammy's character and work. So I'm not a Sammy hater yet.
I am very entertained by Sammy. I enjoy Sammy so much, and I kind of worked myself into thinking he may go over as well. But now that he has it, I'm actually going to go the other way. I think Mox retains the title. I think he is then put front and center as the top guy in AEW, undisputed. He's done interim. He's beat Punk. He goes through the gauntlet. He gets the win.
Would he be a 3-time champion then? Yeah, I guess so.
And I think that sets up MJF Mox.
Okay.
And I like that feud much better, because I don't even see how you do an MJF Danielson kind of feud, right? I just don't see it. Okay. So I think the juxtaposition of having Mox, MJF waiting in the wings, that's where I want to be.
So Mox just, and this is not for you to necessarily have an opinion on or an answer, but Mox's vacation just gets put in the back burner. Not that he needs one, deserves one, but just, hey, this is what you got to do for the business right now. He stays as champion. Is there also any storyline that comes out of that match between Moxley and Danielson and Blackpool Comedy Club? Said it again, Blackpool Combat Club. Or do they remain, they shake hands, they hug, they're afterward, they're good. There's no friction after that.
Yeah, no. I think that my read of this is they have a stellar match in New York City. Mox goes over, moves on to MJF. Blackpool stays together, and they continue to do their thing. Okay,
I'm down with that. So Mox MJF is to be the feature feud coming out of All Out. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you can do something with Danielson, but either one of them, I just think that gives Mox a sense of redemption, and kind of does sort of like the Punk angle sort of is gone, likely with Punk from the company. But then Mox is going to turn around and take another L. Like I just said a minute ago, isn't going to hurt him, but that's if he loses to MJF down the road. But yeah,
Yeah, I think we sit Moxley on top of the company and have him really go at it.
It's what I think. You're not going to find too many fans that are going to have a problem with that, and that's going to that would be probably the best path for maintaining strong viewership and ratings. So, and that has to be factored in. So, I don't see that being a impossible scenario whatsoever. It's probably the most likely scenario. I'll go out on a limb and just say Danielson wins, and him and MJF start something, and they'll figure it out.
Let's talk about the tag picture. Swerve and Our Glory retain the championship over the Lucha Brothers at Dynamite last week. They now go into Grand Slam with their rematch with the Acclaim. As you know, as we talked about, as everybody's talked about, everyone loves the Acclaim. I think AEW in particular was taken aback by the reaction they got at the pay-per-view in regards to the Acclaim versus Swerve and Our Glory. Now it's the rematch. People kind of know what to expect. The Acclaim is going to be super over. What happens at Grand Slam? Swerve and Our Glory versus the Acclaim.
I am personally ready for the Acclaim to hold the belts and for Swerve and Our Glory to sort of blow up and have the two of them start a program. For better or for worse, that's just what I'm ready for.
Yeah, I am too. I'm ready for them to. They're not a tag team. They are two singles individuals that they needed to make credible in this new company. Put the belts on them, but they are not a squad. The Acclaim is a tag team. The Acclaim is AEW homegrown. They have put themselves over in the most unlikeliest of ways, basically with the Gun Club and Billy Gunn, and they've made something that I don't think even AEW brass could have seen being as big as it is.
Yep.
And I hope they go over in New York. I'd be pumped to see it. And I'm really, really impressed with both of them and the way that they're able to like make something out of nothing, right?
Now, do you want to see Swerve and Lee start a program, or do you want to see them try to do several weeks of staying as a tag team, but just having more and more tension, or has that tension reached the point?
I think it's actually they should have broke up weeks. It carried on a bit too long for me, kind of like Julia joining the House of Black. Mm-hmm. Like it should have happened weeks ago.
Yeah, when they had that moment at the battle was it a battle royal where Swerve ended up taking?
It started when Swerve eliminated Keith Lee.
Keith Lee. Yeah. It should have gone, one more week of tension and then a blow up.
And it's been months in title defenses and all that. It doesn't make any sense.
So I'm ready for it. I'm ready for the Acclaim to hold the belts. I don't know if they need to be long-term champions, but at the spot that they're at right now, give it to them. Let them hold it for a few weeks. Let them defend it against some tag teams until maybe either a healthy tag team comes along, a tag team comes back from suspension. Who knows? But yeah, that'd be a good transition tag team for a while.
All right, let's take a quick look at the women's picture. It's a 4-way match. Toni Storm, Sarita Deeb, Athena, Dr. Brett Baker. Interesting enough, not in this match is Jamie Hayter. What do you think about the women's picture right now?
Is this? I'm sort of forgetting now. Is this just is this for a belt, or is this just the four of them, a number one contender match?
No, Toni Storm's a champ, man.
Toni Storm's in the match. She's a champ. Yep. I think Toni retains, but I think there'll be a Jamie Hayter appearance where Jamie and Britt finally come to blows. Jamie breaks away. Britt does something, complains afterwards, slaps Jamie. I think that this match really is for the Jamie Hayter, Britt Baker moment that, can keep the two of them busy for a few weeks. I think that's why Jamie's not in the match, but I see Toni going over. I don't think she ought to. They can't. That belt can't be.
She just got the belt.
Can't be a merry-go-round because it gives it no credibility then. So and it's already got very little credibility right now. It needs to have a lot of credibility. So I want to see Toni retain, but you gotta keep some interesting stories going, and that's where I think Jamie comes in with Britt.
I agree. I think Tony has to retain just because she just got the belt. And it's floundering. That belt is floundering. So they gotta figure it out, right? So hopefully she can hold it and give it some credibility. I do think there's going to be a Brett Baker Jamie Hayter rivalry. That's probably the best women's rivalry in AEW right now. It's just
Agreed.
because they don't have much. They've done a disservice to that division. I do like Athena. I think Athena's great. I don't,
She came in as a seemingly legitimate challenge to Jade, but Jade finished her off, and now Athena's kind of floundering also.
Yeah, it's
which is too bad.
Yeah, it's a tough state over there for the women's division. But I'm with you. Let's quickly go to the All Atlantic Championship. Pac is back with Orange Cassidy. I did laugh out loud when Orange Cassidy showed up to interrupt Pac's interview, and Pac instantly looked at him and just said, "No." Like he's already done this, been through this, done this. But Orange Cassidy is back. What do you think about this one?
Well, I think this is interesting. There's a large pool of talent that'll be competing for this title. This is the title that I believe may become a bit of a merry-go-round of champions. I don't think this title ought to be passed around. So, and I say this also, if you're going to have Pat go over Orange Cassidy, what does Orange Cassidy then do if you don't? If you don't put him over and give him the title, I don't see a scenario where he can break out and become anything other than what he does going forward. And I think that kid has a long future in the business, and this character is what's got him here. But I don't see this as sustainable unless you put a belt on him, even in the silliest of scenarios. It just doesn't. If you don't switch the belt here, then what's the point? I think it's also a little wonky to have Pac holding two titles also. I never think that's a great idea, when someone's like the tag champ and the US champ or, whatever. So I'm going to go and say, I think they give the belt to OC. I think that belt's going to end up getting passed around more often than other belts. So I'm calling for an OC victory, if nothing else, just because what's the point of having that match? OC gets fed to a lot of bigger guys and takes L's, and it's okay. But he's not like Danhausen, where you can do that and it's totally fine. Totally fine.
He's not a clown.
OC is plays a little too close to that line of being a clown that you have to legitimize him sometimes.
I think this is tough because once you mention the two belts and the trios titles and then him holding the other belt, I'm like, maybe you're right. There's nothing in AEW's history that says that Pac goes down to OC. There's just nothing in the history. For whatever reason, he may not be an original pillar, but Pac has been there since the very beginning, and they don't like to see him lose. He really, whenever he's on television performing, doing his thing, he's usually winning titles. He's usually winning. Now, he's a phenomenal talent as well. I enjoy watching his matches. He's great. He has probably one of the best finishers, if not the most acrobatic finisher in the game. But he doesn't go down unless something really, really amazing happens or it's to a really top-tier guy. And he's basically AEW's Drew McIntyre, right? He's like, you can put him in the title picture, you can put him right below that, but you're not going to drop him down to a level where OC has lived, right? So I'm going to go with you on this, but I would not be surprised if Pac just goes over and they just figure out something else. And I think they're okay in many ways with OC being OC. And I think they're okay with him saying he doesn't need a belt. He's going to sell his t-shirts. He's going to have a bunch of kids wearing sunglasses. You know what I mean? As long as he looks good, which he always does.
Oh yeah.
I'm not. I'm gonna go with you just because I don't like the 2 belt thing either. But I would not be surprised if it goes the other way.
Here's the other thing that I sort of feel about Pac too. While he is sort of basically an AEW original, he's either had some injury periods or he's
Sure.
had some
Lengthy period.
and some visa issues, probably maybe during COVID or whatever, where like he has spent a good chunk of time not on TV. That title that they introduced also has not been very heavily featured yet in AEW. So the idea of like maybe putting it on a more recognizable figure for fans, even temporarily, might help give that belt a quick jumpstart that it unfortunately already needs, just because it's been a bit of an afterthought. And for a good part of Pac's career at AEW, he's been somewhat looked at afterthought. I mean, there are definitely, if you take the average AEW fan, they're going to recognize all the wrestlers, but an average fan is going to recognize OC over Pac
Absolutely
more time. So I mean, this may just be a business decision to put some more relevancy, even though it shouldn't be needed. Like a lot of decisions that have been made lately, this might have been mishandled and need to sort of like get it back on track.
I mean, but I think that's what you get when you put the belt on Pac. Like I remember we were talking about this a long time ago. I wanted the belt on Miro. I wanted the belt on whether it was Malachi or somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is what you get when you put the belt on him, and I wouldn't mind OC having, like you said, some legitimacy and almost like, hey, you've been, he fought Omega. What was it, a year ago, 2 years ago? He fought Omega in the like pay-per-view main event. So it's like, I think he deserves some good fortune.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's go to the last match of the first night of Grand Slam, which is going to be Claudio defending the Ring of Honor Championship against Chris Jericho. At this point, I don't know what's happening, what they're doing with Jericho. I know they keep putting him in these big-time matches. He did get one win over Danielson in the big-time matches, but Jericho's doing really, really great work, but I just don't know what they're doing. I don't know what their plan is for Chris or this Ring of Honor Championship.
Yeah, like we're coming up middle of September. The fall season's kind of just kicking in. There still has been no announcement about anything with ROH becoming its own sort of entity. So we're going to keep seeing this for a while. I thought it was very interesting. Jericho had a promo the other day when he talked about all the belts he had held. He had never held the ROH title. That makes me think like, wow, are they going to consider this change? So Blackpool Combat Club isn't sort of like all holding gold. That might be a little weird having two world champions all coming out of the same faction. Like, I still think Claudio, like a little bit the same way with like Tony Storm, like Claudio kind of just got this. He's made 1 or 2 defenses. If you're getting ready to start a sort of its own brand, it doesn't sound like they're going to be having their own TV show anytime soon. But if you're trying to somewhat separate ROH from AEW, putting the title on Jericho is not going to be the ROH leader, I wouldn't think. So Jericho is also somebody who can probably take an L and it doesn't hurt him that much. So that's why I think Claudio is going to go over. But like, it seems a bit like no plan is maybe well thought out, and this including. So, don't be surprised.
No, I think Claudio goes over. I think you're right about the belt legitimacy of him just getting it. And the big question for me is like, what are they doing with Jericho at this point? It's like you give him a match with Mox, you give him a match with Danielson, you give him all these Eddie big blood feud, and his responsibility in all these matches is to lose. That's what it is, and he's gonna lose to Claudio.
And I think Jericho would say, Jericho is the point of his career where like that's okay, and I think Jericho is fine with that. I'm sure fans get it. It's, the ones who were deep into it, but like at some point you want to see. He is one of the best characters. He is one of the best talkers. He can do that. Do L's matter for someone at his stage? Not as much as others, but
no, clearly they don't. Clearly they don't.
But we got to start at least thinking like, is there someone that should be there instead of Jericho? There are.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people, but I'm not gonna argue with some business decision made about Chris Jericho to feature him, because he has proven over and over again that he can handle that spotlight. He can lose with grace, and he can make Claudio look even better than Claudio normally looks. So, was Jericho the guy that Claudio swung on top of the cage several weeks back?
So.
Okay, so they're just gonna keep it going. So, yeah, I don't know.
It's like plug and play Jericho, and you plug and play him in these big, like they're big spots. Let's keep it. They're big spots, and it's. Whether it's Lionheart Jericho from the Heart Dungeon, or what was it, the Magic Man, the other one. It's like
they got the Painmaker. He's got so many different personas.
I
that
get
can
it,
all
but
work.
he's just getting worked.
Yeah.
All right, let's quickly go through the rest of Grand Slam. That'll be airing on Rampage night. Action Bronson Hook versus Jericho Appreciation Society. What do you think? This is a cute one. This is a novelty act. Action Bronson's training. He's cutting promos. I love it. Hook is being Hook. I love Matt Menard. I love those guys. So what do you think about this one?
This is going to be a great match for the fans to watch. It's all going to be on, seeing what can Action do in the ring. Action's been working out. He looks great compared to the way he used to look. Being in New York, it's the right scenario to really feature
hometown Queens.
Yeah, it's gonna be terrific. It's
gonna be fun.
So I think they're gonna go over. I think Hook is, I think, one of the more exciting younger wrestlers in AEW, but so are Angelo and Menard too. Those guys are beginning to grow on me. They were 2.0, right, before they joined.
They were 2.0, but then the Jericho Appreciation Society, they got their names back. It's great.
I like them. This match is to celebrate Action Bronson, and hope he gets a chance to. He's going to do like either a swanton bomb or a back.
Yeah, he's going to be awesome.
Somersault.
I bet he's going to be awesome.
I think it's going to be great. Yeah, so that'll be a fun match to watch, and just to watch Hook in action. Celebrate afterwards with the fans, with their fans.
I'm with you. 100% with you. I do love Matt Menard and Angela Parker. I think they have a lot of acclaim ability to win the crowd over, because they're just hilarious. Next one is House of Black without Malachi Black versus Sting and Darby Allin. So this is Brody King and Buddy Matthews.
Yeah, like, I don't want to say I'm starting to not care about House of Black, because I think they should be in a much more dominant position they are. But if House of Black loses to Darby and Sting, which you kind of want to see, you never like seeing Sting take an L. Darby's taken some L's lately. I think there could be some shenanigans afoot. Is it possible that somebody on that side turns heel and joins House of Black, or is that strained credibility?
Yeah, I think we're way too much into it. I think it's just going to be another one-off match, with a dead storyline that Sting and Darby probably go over. I wish they figure it out. I think Brody King's a star.
Mm-hmm.
I think Buddy Matthews is a star. I think Julia's great. I love House of Black. You're smarter. You're smarter than AEW creative right now, Elliot. Because if you turn if you turn our Darby and make them like the leader, like a Finn Balor Judgment Day type thing, I think that actually works. I think it's smart. I don't think they'll do it, because I think you're smarter than them.
Do you think Sting has had only a few heel runs in his life? One was in TNA, one was for a short period of time in WCW. They didn't work out. So I don't like the idea of Sting at this point trying to turn heel and become some dark.
It would have to be Darby.
It just doesn't work.
And it's not going. And they're not going to do it.
I don't think so. Yeah. So get disappointed that the House of Black doesn't have, and some of it's circumstance, some of it is the situation with Malachi, but like the people that are in House of Black, Buddy and Brody and Julia, and there's lots of people in that organization that can slip in there. They don't need to. They don't need to sign another WWE talent to come fill in. What I did think was interesting is that the House of Black came out after the Darby Matt Hardy match.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Hardy, I could see possibly taking the reins of House of Black.
God, I hope not.
I hope not. I hope not too. But I'm just saying.
I'd rather see Miro.
I think Miro could work too. But I think the reason you see those things on TV is because maybe it might be part of a storyline. So when it happens, you'll point back to that moment. It didn't seem. It looked like there was still a little bit of strain with Darby and Matt even afterwards. So like, it wouldn't shock me. I'm just tossing it out there because I noticed it. But yeah, I think Sting and Darby do go over, and everyone's out. Everyone just looks for something to do after that.
I hope they keep House of Black together. I think Brady King's a star. Hopefully they can make it this way. Speaking of real blood feuds with real heat, possibly. If it's not real heat, it's one of the best works I've seen in a long time. Sammy Guevara, Eddie Kingston. Eddie has repeatedly said on camera, off camera, in kayfabe, out at kayfabe, that he just does not like Sammy Guevara. And obviously there was the rumors that Sammy and Eddie took real exception to Sammy calling him fat and actually had a real scuffle outside of one of the AEW kind of locker room type things. But they're going at it they're going at it at the Arthur Ashe Center in Queens coming up on Friday. So what do you think about this one?
I'm super excited about this match. I love everything Eddie Kingston. One thing about their confrontation a few months ago, unlike the post media scrum backstage, Eddie apparently, like the following week when he came back from suspension, kind of like owned up to his mistake. Everyone gave him a lot of credit for sort of like taking responsibility for losing his cool. So I would venture to say, I'm guessing he and Sammy are okay, and there's not a lot of animosity going into it.
They're working together. So
right. So I think will be a fantastic brawl. It's two very different styles of wrestling, and I think at the end, where everyone's sort of hoping, and I think this will happen, that that Sammy will get his comeuppance, and Eddie will end up beating him and taking him out. Again, neither result would shock me, but I'm gonna I like to see Eddie kind of go murder Grandpa on Sammy and dish out some punishment to him.
I love everything about Eddie Kingston until he actually gets in the ring. Then I hate Eddie Kingston. I love Sammy Guevara, and I love him in the ring. And I hope Sammy goes over because I don't want a loss to Eddie Kingston on Sammy's resume at this point of his life. He's too good to lose Eddie Kingston, in my point.
You're not wrong.
And let's go on to a new face in AEW in many ways, but Diamante takes on the challenge of Jade Cargill. We don't have to spend too much time on this. I'm assuming you think Jade's going to go over. I think Jade's going to go over. The streak continues.
I think they're clearly just like not sure who to put her into a feud with. Diamante is a excellent talent. Haven't seen a ton of her matches, but unless you're going to build up like a Willow Nightingale to like make a run at her, which they're not going to do, even though they probably should. I don't see anyone down the line to challenge Jade, except maybe Julia Hart. I think with a story. No, there's a House of Black storyline. She's improved in the ring. She just got endorsed by Cody Rhodes this morning on Twitter.
She's a part of the Nightmare Factory. That's why.
Yeah, for sure. So I think she's been improving. She's only really featured on Dark, but
she fights on Dark like every week now.
Every week. So she's becoming a little a Dark darling. It's not going to happen immediately, but if simply from lack of having other talent that are sort of being featured regularly, she's got a stable. She's sort of the de facto leader of that stable right now in a way. So. I think they could do something with that, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Jade's going to go over in a romp.
one thing that Diamante mentioned is she was going to bring the OG from the 305 with her. I think that sets up the next Jade feud. That OG is Mercedes Martinez. And so
Oh, okay.
she didn't say who it was in the promo, but everybody says the OG from the 305 is Mercedes Martinez. So she'll come back into AEW with Diamante for this match. And I do think that it sets up a Jade Mercedes Martinez
Well,
situation.
Mercedes is a legit
Very
contender.
legit and a powerhouse and someone that can actually take on Jade with strength as well. A lot of experience. So I think that'll be a good feud. I don't see Jade losing either one of those, but
So will Mercedes just be the 40-0 victim or the 39-0 victim, or yeah?
yeah, I think she gets through Diamante. It probably sets up something with Mercedes. Mercedes still doesn't. They all still go down. There's not the person. I haven't figured out the person yet that takes out Jade and takes her title from her. It's got to be, and it's got to be at a huge event, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we are slowly working our way through. Let's see, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ricky Starks, another blood feud type situation. I'm gonna hopefully say that we put it into this and Starks goes over and we move on. However, they did this already at the pay-per-view and Hobbs went over pretty easily. I actually didn't think that match made any sense. They're doing it again, very much like the Acclaim and Swerve in Our Glory. I think the opposite happens, just like in the tag match. I think Starks figures out a way to go over.
Yeah, that's sort of that follows the sort of wrestling script. So it obviously that has to happen, because if you have it might be a longer match, a better match, but if Hobbs goes over again, then you're sort of you're overplaying this. Ricky Starks is an underdog and he's going to rise up. This week's the week to rise up.
This is the rise up.
But like, it's not great for Powerhouse to take a loss right now. He's being built up, so like, doesn't really benefit.
He's being built up for Ricky Starks though. So this is why they're building him up so he can, so Ricky Starks can go over.
So is Ricky going to get the further push than Powerhouse in the next 6 months in AEW?
Absolutely. Ricky Starks, I think, goes in the title pictures and all that.
I would love to see that. I don't have as much faith as I did a year ago that things are going to be where I'll raise a point that I've raised throughout my entire career on this show. Who is back there with Tony helping him write creative? And is it making sense? And like, or is Tony just by himself at his desk, Vince style, saying, here's what's going to happen. I know what to do because it's my company. So when you have Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky, who like both should be in the title picture, you're going to knock one down a peg or two. But, it happens.
And Hobbs goes down. Starks goes up.
I like that. That's what I want to happen.
Speaking of matches that may not make very much sense, but definitely to build someone up, they're going to build up Jungle Boy because he's taking on Ray Phoenix in a singles match, which undoubtedly will be an awesome match and a fan favorite. However, I don't really see any point to this particular booking outside of Ray Phoenix is awesome and put him on TV as much as possible. However, I think Jungle Boy has to go over. He's in a storyline. They're building it up. Ray is actually not outside of like the trios title type thing. So Jungle Boy goes over Ray Phoenix.
I don't want Jungle Boy to go over Ray Phoenix. I want Ray Phoenix to win, but
yeah, I love Ray Phoenix. He's my favorite. He's probably my favorite wrestler in AEW.
Yeah. I hope they really just entertain the fans. A win or a loss, those two are. I mean, Phoenix is a trios champion. He will remain champion, and with that group, Jungle Boy, by way of losing Christian to injury, is sort of without an immediate feud right now. But I think they need to give him a win to sort of keep his momentum going post Christian. So yeah, this match doesn't make a lot of sense to me, except
doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's really frustrating because they served up Jay Lethal on Dynamite to Jungle Boy, which I thought would have been an amazing feud. If you're taking Christian out of the picture, Sanjay Dutt is hilarious. You've got the whole stable over there with Ring of Honor. I would have loved to seen a Jungle Boy, Jay Lethal, like a real feud, not like a one-off match. They delivered a heck of a match. It was actually a really good match. But I would have loved to have seen that become something, because Christian's not going to be back anytime soon. And so you just got to figure out what you're going to do there.
Right.
All right, there's
So let me ask this. Why isn't Jungle Boy facing Luchasaurus? this
I
weekend?
don't know. No clue.
Doesn't that make the most sense? I
It
mean,
does. You're exactly right. There is a Wardlow Samoa Joe Tony Nese Josh Woods tag match.
Woods is the
Um,
goods. Our boy Josh.
what up, Josh Woods? He's doing great. He is doing great, showing some amazing power as well. Doing just he had a great match. Had a great match the other day on TV. Really solidifying himself on AEW. So we're really proud of Josh Woods. Um, this one here, what are we setting up? Are we setting it? I think you said. Did you allude to we're setting up a Wardlow Samoa Joe feud? What are we doing here?
Well, just the visual of them face to face. They shook hands at the end of Rampage Friday night, but Joe came out or Woodlow came out to save Joe. But then they had sort of a stare down moment when they're both holding their titles. Just the visual of that, I'm sure, made people salivate for let's see those two go at it. Some of it will depend on what ROH, AEW, where those paths go. But just the idea of Joe and Wardlow going at it for either of those titles, would be exciting. But I'm not sure if it actually, happens this week or if it's just, we might just get. I mean, long-term storytelling, putting these two together at first is how you eventually build to a feud. So I expect them to win, and they might dance around and towards each other for the next handful of weeks going forward.
Last thing, and we'll talk about this as it kind of applies to going forward. There is what's called a golden ticket battle royale. This ticket is to determine the number one contender for the AEW championship. I don't fully understand this since MJF has the casino battle royale chip, so he has it's essentially a Money in the Bank situation. Then there's a battle royale with people. I guess I'm assuming people that are not on the card that will be the number one contender. So, any thoughts on this?
They have misused this guy like the whole time he's been there, and he is worthy of being in a main event feud and main event title picture. Give it to Andrade. Let's see this guy.
I don't know who's going to be in the battle.
I think Andrade.
I don't know who's going to be in.
Well, Andrade was cut a promo and interrupted somebody on Friday night. I guess it maybe was best friend. Oh, it was Dark Order, and he was talking about I'll see you in the casino battle royale, pointing at whoever was in there. If he's featured in it, give it to him. Put Andrade. Of all those guys I can think of, I guess is Hangman going to be in this thing too? I don't even know. Yes, they have not. They have not booked it very well, and a lot of it sort of doesn't make sense because isn't MJF the number one contender? Or I guess he doesn't have to. I guess he doesn't have to be. But I mean, the Money in the Bank winner is not necessarily the number one contender. So nope. I guess I can kind of Max can come in whenever he wants. And I wonder if it'll end up being similar to that, where a champ will get pinned or retained and be compromised, and that's when that really makes sense only if you're going to do it if you don't plan on having Mox or Danielson hold the title very long. Do they that's where I'd want to see an immediate cash in. If not, you got to build to something. But be that as it may, that's aside. If Andrade's in this match, give it to Andrade because I think he needs to be in a more high profile feud to match his ability.
I like where you're going with that. I think there's a number of people that should be the quote-unquote number one contender, whether it's Andrade, whether it's Miro, whether it's Hangman. They can all, Adam Cole, if he's back, they can all figure this stuff out. I just don't know. And I think it's a bit much. You're right. I think because all roads point to MJF taking on somebody for the championship, whether it's Danielson or Mox. I don't know where this number one contender fits in, when it fits in, how this works. There was a lot that goes into what's happening moving forward, a lot of moving parts. One of those moving parts that had an extremely long promo, on Dynamite, was the introduction of Stokely Hathaway, and is it the Firm?
The Firm.
And it's very strange because it's not Stokely now says he's not a manager, he's not a publicist, he's just a friend. And the Firm is this loosely hired guns of MJF, but also they have their own ambitions. Stokely went through each and every one of their ambitions on the promo. I thought it was very long, but it is a ragtag group of like collection of workers. So it's Morrissey, it's Lee Moriarty, it's Ethan Page, it's the Gun Club. So what would you think of how they're doing this?
That promo, I was like all for it. I love the idea of it. I love seeing him. I love when Stokely started talking. I'm a big fan of Ethan Page, so I think anything that features him is good. And then halfway through this like really long
It was
promo,
really long.
and he's like hugging Morrissey, I was like, this is and then I remember to myself, wait a minute, is it where's MJF during all this? Did he introduce them? Are they working with each other? Like the explanation was sort of weird. I thought they kind of dropped the ball at the end of this, and I think it's not. I can't see it work. If they were MJF's hit squad,
Love it.
That would work. And
Yes.
like it seemed like they were gonna be, but now they're sort of not. Like
they're independent, sort of like come together when needed for MJF. I don't know. Do they come together for each other? I don't know. Is Stokely in charge? Is anyone in charge? We don't know. Is Stokely going to be in the ring like with Ethan Page? Like we don't know.
And when people like us who like are pretty sensible and can sort of like somewhat understand and know what a relatively normal storyline is going to be, when we're left sitting there going, what are they doing? It's just like there's some misses there. Like, and I can't even put my finger on what the big miss is, except that promo went on way too long, which is kind of weird to say because we love Stokely Hathaway. I'd let that guy.
They messed it up.
Yeah.
I would love to just him take onus and say, I'm running this squad. Like, me and my best friend, MJF, whenever he calls, he, will be there, but I'm running this squad. And my goal is to make Lee Moriarty the pure champion and Ass Boys tag team champions and Ethan Page, all Atlantic champion. Like, if he said, this is what I will do, that's great. Cause that puts Stokely in a position where, when MJF calls, they have a hit squad, but then he runs this other squad, right? They didn't do that. It was like, we're together, we're not together. It was like, when you see us together, we're together. When we're not, we're not. And I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah. Yeah. So I, the leash for me is short to keep my attention. So like they gotta have an impact. I mean, this is what I thought when I saw the hooded sweatshirt guys come out at All Out. Okay, so when they have this championship match, I expect Mox and Danielson. I wanted to see guys in sweatshirts beating them both up and have Mox come in and win the title. Like, if they're not going to be that kind of squad for Max, then I don't know what's going on. But I liked it when it started. By the end, they lost me, and it's never a good thing. So they need to already rethink and recalibrate what they're doing with the firm.
Let's switch gears. As we move on. Let's do another segment, if you will, and let's just quickly talk about what came out this last week, the PWI 500. We know that this is a fictional list. It's actually a staple in the industry, but it is a list that ranks what PWI ranks, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, ranks as the top 500 wrestlers in the industry in order based off of who had like the best year, who's like at the top right now. And so for the industry, PWI has been around for ages. It is, if you will, the Ring magazine of boxing, the Source magazine of hip hop. It is very much the gold standard. Most people know that it is very subjective. Wrestling in general is very subjective. 500 is an awful lot, and trying to fit that in is insane. But let's go through the top 10 and we'll see if you have anything that stands out. Number one at the top.
Before you do, yes. Read what qualifies the qualifiers and read the date time frame before we get into it.
Yeah, I don't have that.
You don't have it. Okay. So it ran from like basically June to June. So it didn't factor in what happened over the summer. So whoever was holding titles of now for WWE, it was still, the same person. And it's a mix of like win-loss record, important noteworthy feuds.
Oh,
You know,
okay. Yeah, no, I have it. I do have it. I'm
yeah.
sorry. Okay. Evaluation period is July 1st, 21 to June 30th, 2022. Activity requirements minimum of 10 matches or 6 matches in a separate month. 10 matches total or 6 matches in a separate month. The criteria is in-ring achievement, influence, technical ability, competition.
Yeah, quality of competition is one too. Okay. All right. So with that, what do you
With
got?
that, we'll go through this quickly. Number 1, top of the table, Tribal Chief. Everybody knows Roman Reigns.
Yep.
He is the one. Roman Reigns is number 1. Number 2 is Okada, New Japan Wrestling Japanese superstar Okada. Number 3, CM Punk. Number 4, Adam Page. Number 5, Bobby Lashley. Number 6, Cody Rhodes. Number 7, Bryan Danielson. Number 8, El Hilo Del. Number 9, Big E. And number 10, Jonathan Gresham. Wow. Lot to say about the top 10. We will not get into all of this now because our show has already been over an hour. But what do you think of the top 10? Who's in, who's out? Notable names that are out. But again, you mentioned the criteria and the time dates. That has a lot to do with some of this. What do you just think at the top of mind?
Top of mind, which was the same as I think most people. What the hell? Where's Jon Moxley? All right. So like I was wanting to mention earlier, it runs June to June. So Mox's run with the title, with the interim AEW championship, doesn't factor into this. It factors into next year, but not to this past year. Even so, he certainly did. I would have had Moxley in the top 10 somewhere, but I am not raging like I might have been in the very first moments I saw that list, once I really was able to digest the qualifiers for it. Everyone on that list, El Hijo Del, I think it's Phantasma, I think is that guy. I don't know much about his year, and outside of seeing Okada at Forbidden Door, and when we saw him in DC at what was that event called?
Capital Collision.
Capital Collision. Thank you very much. So aside from seeing those two, I don't know much about, I don't have in-depth knowledge of what he did during the year. Everyone else, however, from your Big E's, who I guess he must have been holding the world title for some point last year. Gresham was ROH world champion for the bulk of the year. CM Punk, it's kind of really just bad timing that this comes out when he's being vilified by the entire wrestling world. But for what he came in 2 months into the ranking year and headline pay-per-views and was winning matches. So like, you can't argue. Had a year. Hangman Page, sort of the same thing, carried the banner for AEW for a while during that time period. Most of the right names appear to be on it. Someone who's, what you got to just sort of appreciate, and we were talking about this before the show started, was, you see somebody who's in the 80s. Don't tell me that X number of person is better than that person. Well, better was not the qualifier for this ranking. And that's just sort of where we are. So
right.
For those reasons, there weren't any names that like any objective wrestling fan who's been watching the pro would say he doesn't belong there. There are lots of names where you say he should belong here. But if you're really going to follow this criteria, then you got to sort of like appreciate some subtleties that might be the explanations. But overall, like I like seeing some of the names up there, a lot of names who have not been in there in years, a lot of names who are returning after many years. But it is weird that you don't see like a Moxley, a Danielson, a Jericho when like they've been sort of the main faces on your TV in the last year.
I mean, Danielson's 7, so.
Oh, Danielson's top 10. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, so seeing some guys, I think what rubbed people the wrong way was not seeing Moxley and seeing Punk so high. But if you read the qualifiers, like you get why.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I'm actually surprised that there's not as much WWE representation in the top 10. So if you look at the top 10 and you break it down, you've got basically AEW on par with WWE. and then you have the two Japan guys in there, and then Jonathan Gresham, which if you want to say he was at this point kind of the top of the indies, I don't know. I think Gresham's high because if you're looking at somebody like at 13 is where Matt Cardova is. If you're looking at who was at the top of the indies for that time period, you could make the argument that Matt Cardona, and Jonathan Gresham were right up there. But really surprised when you look at the breakdown, right? Which is Roman Reigns at number 1, Bobby Lashley's then the next WWE guy at number 5, and then you go down to number 9 with Big E. So that's only 3 in the top 10. AEW has Punk at 3, Adam Hangman Page at 4. During this time period, you still got to go Cody Rhodes, probably more AEW than WWE, right? Bryan Danielson. And then you have Bryan Danielson in the top 10.
Well, I mean, most of the wrestling world up until sort of recently has been highly critical of the product that WWE has put on television in the last couple of years. Conversely, up until a few weeks ago, there's been sort of universal praise for what AEW is doing. And while WWE was never really acknowledging them enough as competition, yeah, they were. And if they weren't, they should have been. AEW in that period probably, had a fantastic year in all aspects, and was, for a lot of fans, it was a viable, if not preferred, product to the poor effort that we all thought WWE was, putting out there week to week. So that really doesn't surprise me. And boy, have times sort of changed in just the last
really
6 weeks.
It's just a vital time for the list to come out, right?
Yeah, so we ought to get more into it when our favorite heel and heels is here. I know we'll go deeper into some of our friends we've had on the show, friends we've interviewed, and then some other of our favorite folks. We can break it down with Megan another time.
That'll be a good idea. We should do like a special episode and bring a bunch of people back and kind of go over the list, because that'll be a really good idea for the future.
You know who would be great for that episode is Darius Lockhart. Darius, please come in.
Darius Lockhart would be great for every episode. Darius Lockhart, we want you on the show. Elliot, this has been phenomenal as well. We are at our time, and I thought we did a really good preview as we lead into Grand Slam, which will be this Wednesday and Friday. So Grand Slam, I think it's recorded in one night, but it will be split out over Wednesday and Friday at the Arthur Ashe Center in Queens. Huge arena, and it should be a lot of fun, my man.
Yeah, man. And just a reminder that I will be on Tuesday night to talk about all things WWE. Should have my boy Ali with me. We'll be looking forward to our second episode of WCWF, the Tuesday show. We'll talk about the Fed. I'm glad we got together, Mark, on a Sunday. And
it is. And I didn't know I was playing. As I started the show, I felt pretty good. And I feel like I'm playing hurt, because now I'm like my nose is running. I'm coughing. I'm sorry for the audience that's got to witness some of this stuff, but hopefully I'll be back on the mend. But I started, and then it just kind of all started at once.
All went downhill. Well, you're gonna turn the corner, and you might make an appearance Tuesday. If not, we'll definitely catch up Thursday for Thursday's Wrestling Chat with Friends. Our friend Heels will be there, and enjoy Raw tomorrow night. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday.
All right, thanks, guys. We got to count it out as always. 1, 2, 3.